The grand hall shimmered with golden lights and twinkling ornaments, every corner reflecting the luxury that Alex Winter, billionaire and socialite, had spent millions to create. The Christmas party was supposed to be the event of the year, a dazzling display of wealth, influence, and charm. But tonight, Alex wasn't just showing off his empire, he was showing off Lily, the woman he had been quietly seeing for months. Her dark hair flowed perfectly over her shoulders, her silver dress clinging in all the right places, sparkling under the chandeliers as she laughed at his jokes. Alex's chest swelled with pride every time someone's eyes lingered on her. He had finally curated a perfect show of his freedom, his power, his ability to do what he pleased without regard for the past or the people he left behind. He moved through the crowd, Lily on his arm, and every step was calculated to draw attention. Guests whispered, some scandalized, others impressed. They could see the story unfolding in real time, a billionaire flaunting his new love, flaunting his disregard for convention. Alex smiled broadly, aware of the murmurs and glances that followed them, drinking in the mix of envy and admiration. He felt untouchable, he felt invincible. Then he noticed her, Clara, his wife. She had arrived quietly, almost as if by accident, in a soft gray-blue gown that was elegant yet understated. Her entrance was nothing like Lily's. There was no flash, no spectacle, but immediately, all eyes shifted. There was a calm authority about Clara, a quiet confidence that made the chatter around the room pause. Even those who had been fixated on Lily now found their attention drawn elsewhere, captivated not by showiness but by presence. Clara's gaze swept the room, briefly meeting Alex's eyes. For a moment, he felt the familiar pang he had been trying to ignore, the one that reminded him that appearances, no matter how flashy, could never mask truth. Lily, oblivious to the silent competition, continued her laughter, fluttering her hand as she accepted compliments. Guests were eager to speak to her, to be near her, and she basked in the attention, not noticing how Clara's aura subtly shifted the energy in the room. It wasn't about looks or clothes, it was about a magnetic force that Clara commanded effortlessly. People naturally gravitated toward her, seeking her words, hanging on her calm smile, noticing the way she spoke with poise and intelligence. Alex felt a sudden chill despite the warmth of the hall. He had spent so long trying to prove himself, to assert control over his life and his choices, but here was Clara, quiet and understated, making everything he had orchestrated seem superficial. He felt a tightening in his chest as he realized something he hadn't faced in months. Admiration could not be bought. Respect could not be commanded. And attention, the kind that really mattered, could not be forced. As Clara moved further into the crowd, the room seemed to follow her subtly. Guests who had been clustered near Lily drifted closer to her, drawn by the gentle magnetism she exuded. Conversations paused, glances lingered, and the laughter that had been so loud around Alex and Lily felt suddenly hollow in comparison. Even Alex's closest friends, those who had come expecting to cheer him on, found themselves caught in Clara's orbit, nodding at her words, chuckling at her lightly delivered wit, completely unaware of the struggle happening inside Alex. Alex tried to regain control, leaning closer to Lily, whispering compliments meant to be overheard. He smiled at her laughter, trying to recapture the scene he had envisioned, the one in which he was the star, Lily the dazzling co-star, and Clara just a shadow in the background. But no matter how loudly Lily laughed or how dramatically she gestured, it was as if the room had a gravity all its own, and that gravity pulled toward Clara. He felt an unfamiliar and bitter sense of helplessness. Clara approached a group of influential investors, her conversation natural, intelligent, and disarming. She listened more than she spoke, nodding and responding with insight, and yet each word carried weight. One by one, the guests who had been entirely focused on Lily began to cluster around Clara, intrigued and charmed. Lily noticed it now, a flicker of irritation crossing her face as she tried to redirect attention back to herself. She leaned closer to Alex, whispering something in his ear with a forced smile, but even her words were drowned out by the way Clara commanded the room without effort. Alex's own pride fought back. He straightened, trying to make a grand gesture, raising his glass to draw attention, speaking loudly to garner admiration. But it was too late. Clara had already taken the stage of the social hierarchy by presence alone. Guests were laughing at her subtle humor, nodding in agreement with her opinions, and the contrast between her quiet authority and Lily's desperate flamboyance was stark. Alex's chest tightened, his mind racing. He had brought Lily to make a statement, to assert dominance, to prove that he could have what he wanted, but Clara, simply by being herself, had stolen the show. The music shifted, a soft carol playing in the background, and Clara's gentle laugh carried across the room. It was not loud or theatrical, but it was enough. Conversations paused. People looked up. Even Lily faltered for a second, her smile tightening as she realized that Alex's intended display had been undone. Alex felt the heat rise to his face. He could not ignore it. He had underestimated Clara entirely, believing that appearances and charm alone could outshine substance. Tonight, she had proven him wrong. As the evening progressed, the subtle battle for attention became more pronounced. Lily, increasingly aware of her waning magnetism, tried to escalate her antics, leaning closer to Alex, laughing a little too loudly, sprinkling compliments at those around her in a calculated attempt to regain influence. But it only highlighted the difference. Clara's calm presence contrasted sharply with Lily's forced exuberance. Guests, previously dazzled by glittering dress and practiced laughter, now found themselves drawn inexorably to authenticity. Clara's poise, kindness, and unassuming charm radiated in a way that could not be mimicked or bought. Alex watched helplessly as Lily's frustration grew, her attempts at command faltering. He felt an odd combination of pride, regret, and admiration. Pride for the woman he had chosen as his wife, regret for the choices he had made in trying to replace her, and admiration for the effortless way she commanded attention without seeking it. It was a painful realization, one that cut deeper than any personal failure he had experienced in business. He understood that charisma was not something one could purchase or flaunt. It was an aura, a presence, a confidence rooted in authenticity. By the end of the night, it was undeniable, Clara had stolen everyone's attention. Guests lingered near her, seeking a word, a smile, an opinion. Lily had become a footnote in the narrative, her glamour and calculated charm unable to compete with the quiet authority of a woman secure in herself. Alex knew he had been humbled, not publicly, but in the most profound way possible. He felt the sting of truth. The heart, the mind, and even the social stage could not be manipulated by money alone. Presence, integrity, and self-assurance had more power than all the wealth in the world. When the party finally wound down, Clara approached Alex quietly. She did not scold, berate, or boast. Instead, she simply looked at him, her eyes calm, full of understanding yet tinged with subtle triumph. Alex, for the first time in a long time, felt the weight of his choices pressing against him. He had tried to flaunt what he thought would make him powerful, but the lesson was clear. He had underestimated the woman he had married, and now, in front of everyone, the truth had been revealed. Clara smiled softly, not for the crowd, but for him, a smile that conveyed patience, forgiveness, and quiet victory. Alex felt a complex mix of emotions, regret for his arrogance, awe for her quiet mastery, and longing for the simplicity of a bond he had almost lost. Lily, noticing the exchange, felt a pang of unease, sensing that she was no longer the center of attention, and that the dynamics she had tried to manipulate were slipping beyond her control. By the time the last guests had departed and the hall was left silent under the fading glow of the chandeliers, Alex knew that the night had changed him. It had revealed not only the fragility of appearances but also the undeniable strength of authenticity. He realized that Clara's presence had always been more potent than any gesture he could orchestrate, more commanding than any display of wealth. Money could buy beauty, experiences, even fleeting admiration, but it could not buy respect, gravitas, or the quiet power of a woman who truly knew herself. As they left the hall together, Alex remained silent, reflecting on the lessons of the evening. He understood now that he had been chasing a shallow illusion, attempting to construct influence where it did not exist. Clara walked beside him, serene and composed, a reminder of everything he had taken for granted. He felt a shift within himself, an acknowledgement that the real value in life was not in display, but in substance, and the real power was in those who carried themselves with integrity, not ostentation. Even as the winter air embraced them, the echo of the night lingered. Alex knew that this Christmas party, intended as a triumph of ego, had instead become a revelation. Clara had not only reclaimed the room, she had reminded him of truths he could no longer ignore. And in that quiet, undeniable shift, Alex found himself confronted with an inescapable reality. He had been outshone not by wealth or charm, but by the woman who had always been at his side, the one whose attention, presence, and quiet command were worth more than any fortune he could ever amass.